What is the evidence of dishonesty?
The evidence of dishonesty
General
would
Kane,
be in August, they told us they had completely decimated Iran's nuclear program.
Is that?
Then we had to get at them because they were getting nukes. Then it wasn't about the nukes, it was about regime change. Then it wasn't about regime change, it was about terrorism. So they don't have their story straight. So that's what they haven't been honest about, Scott.
Abby Phillip's CNN show had an incredibly heated panel that included Lee McGowan, Keith Boyan, and Josh Rogan going up against MAGA supporters Scott Jennings and Joe Belly. And we're going to take a look at clips from the show with Scott Jennings and the rest. And I want to share my thoughts on this one too, because this is a good segment you don't want to miss. So let's get into it together.
Tonight, the price of oil has skyrocketed to the highest level in nearly 4 years. It jumped to over $100 a barrel, and markets tumbled as a result of it. At the center of all of this is the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has effectively closed that waterway and has struck at least 6 vessels there and in the Persian Gulf in the last 48 hours. And just in, sources tell CNN that the Pentagon and the National Security Council significantly underestimated Iran's willingness to close the strait in response to military strikes. We're also told that the security team didn't account for the potential consequences of what officials are describing as a worst-case scenario. But now, the president is suggesting that higher oil costs are actually a good thing. He posted on Truth Social that because the U.S. is the largest producer of oil in the world, more expensive oil means America is making a lot more money. But he did add that right now, stopping Iran from having nuclear weapons is of far greater interest to him. So this new reporting, I think, is very eye-opening for a number of reasons, because the ability of Iran to continue to keep the Strait of Hormuz effectively closed to non-Iranian, non-allied ships of theirs, even though they are severely weakened, is probably the biggest factor that's going to control whether or not this war continues. Because if oil gets to a certain point, the Trump administration is going to have to deal with the practical and political consequences of that.
Look, it is Iran's only point of leverage right now. Let's be clear about that. There is no other point that they can twist anyone's arm. They can't talk their way out of it. The supreme leader, the new supreme leader, we're not even sure if he's healthy enough to stand. He hasn't been seen yet. So they're playing the only chip they have on the poker table. The president has a lot more chips to play as well. Obviously, there's talk about the Navy coming in, whether that happens this week or next week, to actually escort some ships through the strait. That would be a positive development. But all of Iran's oil is focused, 95% of it, on one island. And the president has not authorized the bombers to take care of that island, eliminate that island. That is the ultimate, pardon the phrase, trump card, which is sort of the doomsday scenario for Iran. That would single-handedly wipe out their entire economy. President Trump still has that card to play. And I hope he uses, that chip against theirs.
You're using a lot of gambling metaphors, which is interesting because I feel like this entire thing is one big gamble where we didn't consider the consequences. Like you're talking about he's got one chip and we have a bunch of chips. I feel like this is the most obvious ace up your sleeve situation that you could possibly have. Like to not think that they were going to close the Strait of Hormuz seems foolish. It feels like that was exactly what they were going to do. 1/5 of the world's oil goes through there for the entire world. So they're not just holding that, they're holding the world's oil hostage. And then on top of that, it's like, they don't have anywhere to store the rest of the oil that they're actually pumping out of the ground. So all the places that are pumping oil are like, what are we going to do with this if we can't move it out? So that's also causing a problem. And then we have all of our bases around the Middle East. So that would be another chip that they could play. They could blow up our own bases that we've spent billions of dollars on over the years.
You got me on the gambling stuff. That was a good one.
I'm not trying to get you, dude. We're at war for no reason. We're at war for no reason. And you're like,
if we're not talking about chips, we're talking about nuclear warheads and nuclear enriched uranium.
No,
is it better
there's no
that they
reason
have
and no intelligence that there was any nuclear warheads
no one
there.
thought this plan out. Is it better? Would it be better that Iran has enriched uranium that they can now deploy to their proxies in the Middle East or use it themselves?
But that's not what they said. That's not what's on the table.
I actually think that's a good question. It's a good question whether we're even going after the enriched uranium because, look, the objectives here and what they actually will accomplish, that is one of the big question marks. Are they actually going to be able to get to that uranium? Or are they actually going to be able to take it off the table? I'm not so sure. We've seen evidence of that.
Right. I don't think you have to have secret intelligence sources to know that they failed to plan for a lot of the contingencies that were easily predictable if we were going to attack around the Strait of Hormuz, the attacking of our embassies, tens of thousands of Americans trapped and can't get out of the country as they're in danger. They didn't bother to tell them. No consultation with allies, no energy policy to offset the disruption. And they're scrambling. Now we've got to release Russia sanctions to get more oil on the market. And now we've got to tap the strategic reserves. And they're obviously reacting. They're killing the mine boats after the mines are already in the water. Okay, so they're constantly chasing the Iranian strategy. And it just shows what happens when you have a military-only approach that has nothing to do with the diplomatic, economic, and political consequences of launching a major war that's going to engulf the region in fire. And so when you look at any one of these issues, you have to say to yourself, man, this should have been planned a lot better, whether or not you think this is a good idea or a bad idea. And in the end, at every stage, the administration is going to face this issue of okay, how much pain are we willing to take for the American economy? How many dead men and women are going to return to Dover Air Force Base? How many billions are we going to spend? And can we suffer more than the Iranians? And over time, the Iranians are betting that they're going to be able to suffer more than us. And they may be right about that because Trump changes his mind all the time. And that speaks to your questions about objectives. They're always changing because Trump's constantly changing his mind.
So
that's crazy.
Two different administration officials, both involved in the energy strategy, talked about whether or not the boats would be escorted in the Strait of Hormuz or not. Just listen to what they had to say.
Can it happen now? Will it happen soon that the Navy can do that? It'll happen relatively soon, but it can't happen now. We're simply not ready. All of our military assets right now are focused on destroying Iran's offensive capabilities and the manufacturing industry that supplies their offensive capabilities.
That was always in our planning, that there's the chance that U.S. Navy or perhaps an international coalition will be escorting oil tankers through. There are, in fact, tankers coming through now. Iranian tankers, I believe some Chinese flag tankers have come through. So we know that they have not mined the straits.
They're letting the Chinese...
I want to stop here for just a moment before we get into the next part. Lee McGowan's point about the gambling metaphors the Trump administration uses is exactly right. And then you have Joe Belly dismissing it, saying it was some kind of zinger when she wasn't trying to land a punchline. And I wish they had gone more in depth on that, because this whole administration operates like a gamble. When Trump says higher oil prices are good for America, they're really good for him and his buddies who buy on the dip. He can announce the war is over, prices drop, they buy, then he escalates the war, prices go back up, and it all benefits his cronies, a pattern that's persisted throughout his term. And while it's hard to know exactly how to stop it, if the Democrats gain power, especially given the current war situation, they should be poised to win the midterms and immediately hold accountable those responsible. Yet many Democrats are complicit or hesitant, failing to take a unified stand against endless war. And while hope for immediate action is slim, McGowan is spot on with the gambling metaphor, because this administration has thrived on speculation, crypto, stocks, and market manipulation. And now let's see what smug Scott Jennings has to say.
These tankers through because they're partners with China,
right? Yeah,
and getting money from the Chinese.
That's
not a good example of a successful
not ours. But I mean, if you listen to that, I mean, you're hearing, Scott, two different messages here. But the bottom line is that it's not happening right now. We are 12 days into this war, and for us, and for the rest of the world outside of Iran, China, and India, the Strait of Hormuz is closed. So we are effectively unprepared for this moment.
Well, I mean, as you said, we're 12, 13 days into this. And I suspect that over the next few days, we will be working with international partners to open it up. I don't know whether it will happen within the next 24 hours, 48, or what have you, but it's obviously a priority. I agree with Joe. This is really the last thing Iran is capable of doing. And so we have to destroy their capabilities of doing that. It seems to me, given the fact that they have been intermittently attacking all their neighbors in the Gulf, the other Arab states, that they would have some interest in possibly over time ensuring that the strait remains open. So I think it's sort of fashionable to freak out and have a meltdown when you oppose something in the first place. But again, we're in the middle of the second week of this. We have pummeled their offensive capabilities. We have destroyed nearly all of their air defenses. I mean, I think we are currently meeting our objectives. I think the issue you raised
What are
about
our objectives?
No nukes, no missiles and drones, no aggressive Navy, no exporting of terrorism.
Based on what?
Period.
Based on what intelligence? Based on what evidence?
You don't think Iran is the largest state sponsor of terror, that they pursue nuclear weapons, that they have missiles and drones, and they have an aggressive Navy?
What's the evidence that we've met those objectives?
Yeah.
And how do you know what it is?
Well, we have a severe, in the daily Pentagon briefings, we get a mathematical calculation of the degradation of the number of missiles and drones they've been able to fire. Number two, we have a full, we have an account. Yes, we have.
Well,
we have an accounting.
Building new missiles and drones every day.
They have talked about their capacity.
We have an accounting every day of how many ships we've sunk. And so
we are.
But I guess I wonder, the two perhaps most important.
They constantly harass ships.
The two most important elements of this are going to be the nukes and this idea that are they going to export terrorism. I don't think we've seen any evidence that either of those two things have actually been halted.
I think the nuclear, just to answer your question, to me, the nuclear piece is the most important piece. The president set a red line. I'm never going to permit them to have nuclear weapons. They went to the table with our negotiators, and their opening position was,
where are they?
We have the material to do 11.
Yeah, I get
that's what we have to do.
I get that we know that they said that they had it, but I'm asking, do we know that we've destroyed it? Do we
We've not
have it in our
yet.
possession?
No.
So that's going to be a key question.
And that's part of the problem. This whole mission has been a disaster. And I think it's an
For who?
unmitigated. It's
Iran?
It's
I agree with
unmitigated
you. That's
disaster.
what-
It's an unmitigated disaster for the world, for the United States of America. Maybe it's funny to you, but
It's funny to me that you're hoping that we lose this war to Iran.
That's not what he
amazing.
said.
I never
Scott.
said that. But,
I've got to stop for just a minute here. Scott Jennings is such a smug prick, everyone knows it, but the idea that questioning what's happening with the war somehow means you want the United States to lose is absurd. And honestly, I wish Keith Boyan would just call him out and punch the guy. Because isn't that what everyone watching outside the MAGA bubble wants to see, someone just knock Scott Jennings and the other MAGA scumbags into next week?
Disaster for.
it's a disaster for the 170 school children who were killed by our U.S. Tomahawk missile. It's a disaster. It's a disaster for the. It's a disaster for the 7 U.S. soldiers. The 7 U.S. soldiers who were killed.
You're
in this
wish-casting
mission.
an American disaster is amazing.
No.
It's incredible.
Scott, its mission has been a disaster. The motives have continued to change from one day
they
to the
haven't.
next.
They have not.
The announcement today from the White House was almost identical to the announcement on March 2nd.
Can I just finish? I let everyone else speak. I haven't spoken. President Trump said he wanted unconditional surrender. He said he wanted regime change. We're not going to get unconditional surrender. We're not going to get regime change. We have another Ayatollah Khomeini now in charge. The same person, same person with a different person with the same name, essentially running the country right now.
Maybe.
And maybe or maybe not. But we don't know what's going on because our government hasn't been truthful in telling us what we need to know about what's happening. And this is part of the problem.
What have they not been truthful about?
This is part of the problem with the administration because they've been dishonest about what their objectives were from the beginning. They've been dishonest about what they've accomplished from the beginning.
What's the evidence of dishonesty?
And they were dishonest about the Tomahawk missile.
What is the evidence of dishonesty?
The evidence of dishonesty
General
would
Kane,
be in August. They told us they had completely decimated Iran's nuclear program. Then we had to get at them because they were getting nukes. Then it wasn't about the nukes; it was about regime change. Then it wasn't about regime change; it was about terrorism. So they don't have their story straight. So that's what they haven't been honest about, Scott. And at $1 billion a day, $11,000 a second, the American people are allowed to ask what the problem is, and we're not going to laugh about it. Okay, that's not what we're going to do.
Joe, go ahead.
Just the money argument is so rich. The money, how much we spent, $11 billion so far. We gave Ukraine $188 billion to prosecute their war, and the reaction from the left is to even give more money, to fund more money, to spend more money in Ukraine. So yeah, it cost $11 billion. I'd rather the United States spend $11 billion, maybe $20 billion, maybe $30.
$11 billion in 6 days.
If it results in, and I'll put the caveat, if it results in either the regime changing,
which is not happening,
or the inability of them to possess nuclear.
Okay, but Joe, what if neither of those things happen? Because as of this moment, it does not appear.
As of this,
hold on a second.
They set a timetable, and you're changing the timetable.
As of this moment, there's no indication that the regime has been weakened or that they have.
You don't think Iran's been weakened?
All of the reporting out there from within the administration is that they recognize that the regime has not. They have not shifted away from the Islamic.
Of course not. They're religious fanatics. They personally never changed. But to say they haven't been weakened, I think is not true.
Scott, I mean, listen, I'm talking about how much control do they have over their own country? And I'm not saying that people weren't killed. Hold on a second, Joe. I'm not saying that people weren't killed in the regime. I'm just saying, are they in less control? And the answer is no. They're not.
Scott Jennings, I just can't take anymore. I can't play another second of this video. Because he takes everything the administration says as gospel, and yes, I get that he's a propagandist who will spread whatever he's told, but if anyone questions it, suddenly you're un-American, and it's incredible that this guy gets on TV almost every night, racking up ratings for CNN. While we never see a decent Republican who can actually engage in a real debate without the chest-thumping and name-calling. That says if you question anything, you hate America, and sadly, it feels like anyone who calls themselves a Republican or on the right is on board with all this garbage. And then you have Joe Belly dismissing $11 billion spent as nothing when the American people care, because we've seen this movie before, the bottomless pit of waste with trillions spent in the Middle East. And imagine if just 10% of that had been used at home to fix infrastructure, improve healthcare, and stop people from going bankrupt when they get sick. But these scumbags like Joe Belly, Scott Jennings, and all the other MAGA garbage cheer on this wasteful spending and then fight against anything that would actually help Americans at home. And if you're from another country, it might be hard to believe that our government won't act for its people but will happily hand out blank checks for wars, and the American people are sick of it, with this war polling only 25 to 40% approval, yet Jennings can. Smirk and Belly can sit there with his bald head saying, "Who cares about this spending?" While the public obviously does, and hopefully these creeps end up on the dustbin of history, and even though I don't have much faith in the Democrats, they need to be united in opposing this war, declaring it illegal, and pushing for Trump and his cronies to face trial for war crimes and all other crimes committed against the United States. So let me know what you think. Are you on the side of reason with Lee McGowan, Josh Rogan, and Keith Boyan, or on the side of insanity with smug Scott Jennings and fat scumbag Joe Belly? I know that's harsh, but this one really pissed me off, so leave a comment, give a like, subscribe. I'm Chris on Culture, and I'll see you in the next video.